Hello，大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。As the world gears up for President-elect Donald Trump to re-enter the White House on January 20, one of the main questions on many people's minds is how relations between the world's two largest economies, China and the US, will shape up over the next 4 years. Many in the US firmly see it as an all-or-nothing battle for ultimate supremacy, winner takes all, while the Chinese side continually stresses win-win cooperation, mutual respect, peace and stability. Some Americans, though, do see through the smoke and believe both sides can win. One of those people is Thomas Pauken II, author of Us versus China, From Trade War to Reciprocal Deal, who says he's pro-America first and a massive supporter of Donald Trump, while at the same time being China-friendly. Is that even possible? Well, today Thomas is on the show to answer my questions. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Borham in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. If you read Western media regularly, you'll know that China is cast as one of the West's biggest enemies, a threat to world order, peace and stability. Perhaps exactly because of how the media portrays this country, many adults in the West have entirely negative feelings about China and see it as nothing but a threat that needs to be wiped out. But some Americans can see the larger picture, especially those who live in China and understand this massive country from their own experiences. One of those people is author and political commentator Thomas Pauken II. Thomas, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it certainly has.
Now, you say that you're an American patriot, while at the same time being supportive of China and hoping that both sides will succeed. Now, some people might say that's a bit of an oxymoron. What would you say to them?
Well, definitely, and that's one of the reasons I had written this article. I was asked by a new think tank that started up, and they asked me to sort of write some articles for them, sort of work as a volunteer, as a senior fellow type person. And obviously, I'm pro-Trump. Everybody who knows me knows I support Trump publicly. Just look at my Twitter, X. I'm hardcore Trump supporter. But at the same time, I've lived in China since October 2010. And at first, I was going to address the political issues. And then I'm thinking, I need to introduce myself. I need to explain talk directly to Trump supporters in America who are very suspicious of China. And how can they trust a voice like me? Okay, maybe they think that I'm just some guy who's paid off by the Chinese to say lovely things and tell them what they want to hear. But I wanted to show that I used to also be a China hater. I used to be the same as them. I was like, let's go to war against China. Let's, defend the enemies or the people who are perceived as the enemies of China, just because I thought they were bad. I grew up in an environment in a Cold War mentality. And as I also point out in the article, that the years I grew up in the 80s and 90s were a massive transition period from the end of the Cold War into the globalist era. Okay. So a lot of people have been influenced by that, and people my age tend to be probably your hardest core source of the anti-China group in America, people my age. But at the same time, some of the strongest supporters of China are also around my age, because they saw the transition, realized that China did not turn against the world and start bombing everybody and invading other countries. That it was sort of like, well, maybe I need to do a logical rethink on what's really going on. China has been demonized and villainized. I have lived here since 2010. I have not changed my personality. I am still like a bull in a china shop. That's never going to change. And the fact is had China been as evil as it's been described, I probably either would have been kicked out of the country already, or I wouldn't be alive at this moment.
So before you mentioned you recently wrote about being pro-America, pro-MAGA, and pro-Donald Trump, while at the same time being China-friendly. Do you not think those positions are maybe at loggerheads with each other?
Well, obviously, it definitely looks like a massive contradiction, and I go back to what I had written. But at the same time, what I'm also trying to make the argument is that you can be both. I think part of the problem I see from, say, I see two extreme positions. Sometimes I come across some pro-China people like you, Andy, and sometimes I'm thinking, wow, it's just a little bit too much. Okay, you know,
And you always tell me
I'm
directly.
sure many people have told you that. Okay, and at the same time, I also see that kind of extreme version on the Trump side. That is like, wow, I like Trump too, but he's not God. Okay. I'm Catholic. I say that in my article. I grew up in Catholic education. We are we are taught not to believe people are God, that especially politicians. Okay. So I also understand that there's a lot of these extreme positions. And I also mentioned the article, and I've even mentioned this in my trade wars book, was this cultural concept that Americans have a tendency to view, especially foreign policy, in a lens of action blockbuster movie. Okay. We all love Chuck Norris. My son loves Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris. He thinks he's the best. He never loses a fight. He's the best American ever. Okay. So what I'm trying to get at is that our culture just sort of loves hyperbole. It loves this concept of who is bad, who is good, because it's a good storyline. Now, what I also want to emphasize here is that this does not make Americans bad people. Okay, actually, we think we're good people because of that. Okay, a lot of times other countries will see that and say, "Oh, you're just being too simple-minded." Well, no, actually, we just have this idea that if you're a good guy, we have to support you, and if you're the bad guy, we have to fight you.
Speaking of Hollywood movies, I want to talk about the movie Mission Impossible, because I kind of feel like your biggest challenge for now is maybe trying to convince your fellow Americans that both sides can win, that both sides can work together. And that sounds a bit like the movie Mission Impossible. Would you agree?
No, I wouldn't say that's necessarily true. I've for the past year or so, especially during the Trump campaign, you have to remember that there was a time when even Trump said in his nomination speech at the RNC convention that he wants Chinese companies to come to America, open up factories, invest in America, make America, hire America. Simple logic. Okay, not even Biden was saying this, but Trump did. So this is not a mission impossible, but I have to explain to people that you have to change the mindsets, change the ways of thinking. Part of the problem with how people are viewing this is from a purely political lens. That's what Democrats do. They focus on the politics. Whereas if you really look at Trump, although he says some things that even I myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, I don't know how to defend that. Maybe I'll just sort of overlook it. It's more of like a negotiation style. You go in, you ask for these extreme positions, and you demand everything. You demand the world, and you'll be happy if you get 10% of it. You won. Okay. So when you have that kind of lens, and also Trump clearly explained how he does this with his book, The Art of the Deal. He has it in writing. You want to know how to negotiate Trump? You just go read The Art of the Deal. You're done. And I think that aspect of it is actually a good thing because he clearly is stating that if you focus on a business, then you can talk to him from a transactional, what is the benefit viewpoint. And the Chinese are actually very good at that when they focus on business oriented negotiations. If the Chinese can focus on this aspect in negotiations on a transactional, financial win win benefits way of talking, this is going to be a big win for both countries.
What do you think the biggest challenges facing China and the US or their relationship today?
I think the biggest challenges aren't actually Trump. It will be actually Trump's people. That they will probably say that when he starts hearing the benefits of working with China, that Trump, as a deal maker, will start wanting to make deals. And it's quite possible that he will have some aides. I'm not saying Rubio, because from what I'm hearing now, Rubio is becoming more enlightened. So I will make no negative comments on Rubio for the time being. And I also heard he's much better than Pompeo. But you will have certain people who may urge Trump that, oh, you got to really stick it to to the Chinese because they've been hurting us for so long. And, the only way they can respect is by you pushing, pushing, pushing. Uh, and there is a negotiation tactic that kind of works on certain type of people, but I don't believe that works on the Chinese. And if I had an opportunity, and one of the reasons I wrote the article and had it sent out to people who were even, anyway connected with Trump, is I want them to know, talk to somebody like me, because I think I can't come up with all the solutions, but I can at least help you. The Trump administration thinks of new ways to communicate with China, because if you just focus on the pressure, then China will feel like their way of saving face is by responding with equal pressure or tougher pressure in return. So, there's going to be some back and forth, but there's ways to negotiate that doesn't become this chaos that could occur.
And that brings me to the last question I have for you today. If you had 10 minutes with President-elect Donald Trump to advise him on China, Sure. What would you say?
Well, I would tell, first of all, Trump, thank you for finally inviting me. I've been trying to find some way to communicate with you earlier, but that's okay. You have lots of people who are anti-China, so I understand that perhaps they don't want you, Trump, talking to somebody like me. Politics, it can be a very brutal business. I've been dealing with politics for many years, and I definitely understand the game. But at the same time, let's really focus on what the Chinese say is a win-win. Also, at the same time, find ways for China. Ask them how can we make a deal? What can be done? It's okay to do some pressure on China, because no country's perfect, no government's perfect. In regards to IPR protections, tech transfers, China has also done high tariffs before and still has some tariffs. Phase one, let's also talk about the fact that China probably should be buying U.S. agriculture like they promised from phase one. It's understandable that they got upset over Trump's COVID response. But let's return back to the table. Let's see if we can persuade China to go back to buying more U.S. energy imports, U.S. agriculture imports. If you hear some excuse that, you can buy it cheaper in Argentina, a deal's a deal. The deal is that phase one is a real deal that was already signed off on. Okay, so maybe COVID was an interruption. Biden administration was an interruption, but now we're going back to Trump's second term. So let's go back to what was original and try to get China to focus on that aspect. And then if they can start focusing on that aspect, then maybe, lifting the threat of 60% tariffs is okay. And I also believe, from what I'm hearing, that the 60% tariff threat is just a threat, but it's not an empty threat. Okay? So if China says, we're going to call your bluff, you don't call bluffs on Trump. He even says that in the Art of the Deal. He would rather come out a loser than have his bluff called. Okay? So I think that's what I would say to the Chinese people. Don't call Trump's bluff. But at the same time, Trump, if you're making a threat, allow for some type of walk away in case there's a deal. And most of the time, Trump is very open to that concept.
So it sounds like maybe one of your tips for the Chinese side would be to read The Art of the Deal. Thomas Pauken II, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And on that note, that will be it for today, you guys. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Can America and China both win? Will relations get better under Donald Trump? Let me know down below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.